Hello everyone, I'm Lonnie, the Untitled Network, brought to you by Infinity Flux out of Hickson, Tennessee, here to talk about the newest Walking Dead issue. As you can see, it's on the screen, but I also have my physical copy. Oh, ain't that neat? Isn't that just neat? But Walking Dead 177, cover price $3.99, available at Infinity Flux in Hickson, or your local comic shop if you're not local to the Chattanooga area. But yeah, this issue, we finally, after several, hold on, I've got to pull the mouse out here. After several issues, we finally do get a glimpse back at, like, the hilltop and, you know, a few other places. It kind of hovers around and goes to a few other areas. The focus, for the most part, stays on the Commonwealth, which, if you're new to the comics, the Commonwealth is like a new community. They claim to have about 50,000 people, and a small group of, I think, like Michonne, Eugene, Sadiq, and a new character named Princess, and like one or two others. They kind of left Alexandria to go meet these people at the Commonwealth. This story's been brewing for a couple dozen issues. It really started when Eugene, not long after the time jump, right after All Out War, he got on a ham radio and was talking to some people. And that went on for a long time, like through the Whisperer War and everything else. And so now they decided, you know, it come to light, and so they ended up actually sending a group of people I just named to the Commonwealth. And so this seems like an alright place. I still can't quite put my finger down on what it is. Like, you know, you can always tell there's something not quite right. But there's a lady who is basically in charge there. She's like the governor. She has a son who we just saw in this issue is kind of a dick, for lack of a better word. There's a guy we were introduced to named Mercer, who seems to be like their head of security, like the kind of the government bodyguard, I guess. You know, he's tasked with watching the governor's, I guess, late teens, early 20s son, and when they go outside of the Commonwealth. And there was a scene in here where the governor's son had like taken a woman out to the middle of nowhere, and they were getting ready to get kind of hot and heavy on a picnic blanket, and a couple of zombies walk up on them, get basically right on top of them, and Mercer kills them with an axe to the head. The guy gets all mad that Mercer let the zombies get that close, and he runs off complaining and ends up going home and griping to his mom, crying, blah, 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 all that. But what he didn't know was Mercer had taken out like a dozen or more zombies as they're walking up on them, but the dude didn't know that. Of course, honest to God, he probably wouldn't care anyway. So we get that, and towards the end of the book, Mercer is talking to another bodyguard, another military guy named George, and they are in a locker room, and they just kind of, you know, they're complaining to each other about the people in charge, and they basically are like, hey, you know, we don't even have to lift a finger. We can just let nature take its course, and, you know, the zombies will get these people, and all this stuff. And I can kind of see where the guys are coming from, because the people in charge really do, you know, seem like jerks. It's almost like the current world, you know. It's like they've actually held some of the stuff that really made the old world kind of bad. I can see that. And they have like this really strict, it seems like, job system where everybody's given a job. They don't really seem to have a whole lot of say. That's kind of what I'm gathering here, although nothing has really been shown as like really inherently bad. Um, so anyway, we see in addition to all that, they're sitting there talking about possibly letting some zombies do their work on maybe like the governor's son or somebody like that, and it just so happens freaking Sadiq is standing there, and that's how the issue ends. Spoiler alert. I'm going to be giving a lot of spoilers for this book. But earlier in the book, there are a couple of guards at, I believe, the hilltop, and one of them has like a cracked spear, and so he goes to the armory to try to get a new spear, or to maybe get a new one so the old one can get repaired. And he sees, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's been pursuing Maggie since, a little bit after the war, and she's put him off. And then she finally kissed him like an issue or two ago. And so this other guy, the guard, walks into the armory, and Maggie and this guy are like hiding in there, like getting ready to get down to business in their underwear. And so the dude hurries up and shuts the door, and they're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe he saw us." And Maggie, still feeling guilty over having feelings for somebody else years after Glenn has died in issue 100. And she basically gets guilty again. Is like, "Oh, well, I'm sorry, we've done this," and everything. So she's still having guilt issues like that. We get to see Michonne really kind of have an in-depth reunion with her daughter. Elodie, I believe is her name. And Elodie basically tells her that her sister is no longer living, and that like a year earlier they had gotten in with a group in Kentucky, some really bad people who let Elodie and her sister stay there with them and protect them in exchange for like favors, and you kind of get the idea of where that was going. The sister refused, and apparently they tortured her and killed her. That's kind of what I gather, but Elodie gave in and did what they wanted, and that's why she's still alive. And so they have this really deep conversation about how they do things to survive, and Michonne's like, "Oh, we don't need to talk about the past anymore. We've both done sometimes horrible things to survive." And I'm sure that's kind of harkening back to where she had been raped by the governor repeatedly and tortured, and she ended up really mutilating him. And just everybody in the zombie apocalypse has done some really screwed up stuff just to survive, or just to make sure they live to see the next day. So they're kind of struggling with that, and I'm sure Michonne's probably going to struggle a little bit with knowing how one of her daughters died and how the other one survived. Both are, I think, equally messed up. At the very beginning of the issue, we see Rick listening to one of the residents read a poem about the feelings they have about their mother passing away. And like some of these characters, like I've not seen in a while, and I'm not really 100% who they are. But it's somebody who lost a mother, and I'm sure if I go back and like read some basic like character biographies and stuff, I could kind of get back in tune with some of the lesser known characters. But the guy actually recommends to Rick that Rick maybe sit down and write some stuff about Andrea, who Andrea had died a few issues back after being bitten on the shoulder by a zombie. But Rick is like, "Oh, I don't quite know about that." So anyway, that's pretty much how the book went. Everybody's still adjusting. We get to hear a little bit of how Michonne's daughter survived, how her other daughter didn't survive. We got to see a little bit of Alexandria and the Hilltop. We got to see the governor's son. I really don't like him. God only knows where that story's going. If he'll end up being like the villain, Mercer may end up having some uprising in the Commonwealth. Lord only knows where the story's going. It could go anywhere. But really good. I'm gonna give this issue 9 out of 10, and excellent issue. Can be picked up for $3.99 at Infinity Flux. And The Walking Dead right now, the comic book is really knocking it out of the park, even when the TV show occasionally falters. But overall, great book. Be sure to check it out. Just came out today. Oh, and also, one more thing before I get off here. If you open up the book to the letter pages, you will see right there. Check that out. Lonnie Henderson, Untitled, Nerd Network. I actually had a letter printed in The Walking Dead number 177. This actually isn't my first letter printed in The Walking Dead. I actually had a letter printed way back in The Walking Dead number 130, which was the first appearance of the Whisperers. So, super duper. Super happy to have a letter in here. That is freaking awesome. Because not a lot of people can say they've had a letter printed in The Walking Dead. Even fewer can say they've had two. And it was pretty cool that they also let me mention Untitled Nerd Network under my name in that. So anyway, that's it for the review. 9 out of 10 on The Walking Dead number 177. Check it out. $3.99 either digitally at Infinity Flux in Hickson. That's where we tell our local people to go in Chattanooga. And or you can go to your local comic shop wherever you may live. Support your local comic shops as they need it in this digital age. Anyway, I'm Lonnie with Untitled Nerd Network, brought to you by Infinity Flux, and I'll see everybody later. This has been The Walking Dead review of The Walking Dead number 177, New World Order, part 3 of 6.